we're heading out to the water for another fishing adventure. And if you're struggling this time of year to get bites and hook up with those bass, I have the perfect Texas Rig Retrieve that is sure to help you out. But before we head out to the water, check out the brand new merch store that I just opened up. I had a lot of people asking me when am I going to start selling hats and t-shirts. I've got a limited selection right now, but depending on the response, I will definitely expand. But without further ado, let's go ahead and head out on the water and start catching some fish. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing, and we're here at the boat ramp at the Big Lake. I just put the old Arthritis Express in the water and we're getting ready to head out. But before I do, I wanted to talk to you about what the plan was for today. We've had a warming trend. It's back up in the 80s in this area, which is going to bring that water temperature back up, but I'm still going subtle. Today I'm going to focus on small jigs, 1/4 ounce bitsy bugs, bitsy flips, maybe something up to maybe a 3/8 ounce like an Arky jig or something like that. I'm going to be using stick baits, pieces of them as trailers. That's where I want to start out. A Texas rigged worm, probably a 4-inch or a 5-inch on a 1/4 ounce bullet weight, is also going to be something that's going to be a player today. I want to drag that bottom a little bit and see if maybe we can get a little bit bigger bites. And if those bass are being more active, then we're going to move on from there. Possibly even try some topwater like a popper or a jerkbait, or maybe even a square bill gets thrown in the mix. I'm going to let those bass dictate that to me. I've checked the weather. I know that we're going to have light winds, and that means hardly any current. So I'm going to have to be on the lookout for where those bass are going to be holding up. So obviously I'm going to default to where I'm looking for those warm spots. That's what we're going to try. So let's get out there and let's make it happen. Alright, as you can see, we are in an extremely shallow hydrilla flat. You can see how clear that water is. Now even this is very stained compared to what it normally is. And I've got my trusty old scum frog out, and just for laughs, I'm going to throw it through here. I honestly don't know if those bass are active enough for a frog, but I want to try it anyway. But still, this is the types of place that I'm targeting today. And I'm seeing, actually just saw a whole bunch of activity over that way, so that's the way I'm going to be heading. The bass letting me know they were there. So we're going to kind of mosey on this way. We might be able to get something with this frog. But this water is clear, clear, clear. Now I waited until late afternoon to come up here simply because this clear water takes longer to warm up than dirtier water. We've got some more stained water down in the lake proper more, and this is obviously, this water is very clear. It's very highly vegetated. Now there are bass in here. There are always bass in here. Question is how active are they? So I'm kind of using the water temperature. We've got a little bit of current coming across here. I kind of want to use that to guide me. You know, I mean, not all areas of the lake are going to be active all the time. And that's part of lake breakdown, knowing what times the lake, you know, what time the parts of those that you want to fish are going to be more active. And here, because even though we've had quite a bit of sun, quite a bit of sunshine and warmth the past few days, I mean, it's gotten back up into the mid 80s, the water is still shallow. So we kind of want to keep that in mind. And it's still pretty cool. The water temperature here is 67 degrees, almost 68 degrees. So it's still down about 2 or 3 degrees compared to the rest of the lake. And that's what happens with shallow water. Again, I'm just going to rifle through here with this frog. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time through here, because I'll be able to tell pretty quickly if the bass are going to be active or not. And because they're taking the lake, they've already started doing drawdown from what I can tell. And because of that, the lake is a lot more shallow than it normally is. I mean, it's shallow through here, obviously. It's always shallow through here. But it's even more shallow right now. I mean, this is very, very shallow. This is like sketchy shallow. So we're going to be nice and easy through here. I'm not trying to get my boat stuck. I've gone about as far as I want to go this way. We are in less than a foot of water. But I still want to fish this frog around some. You never know. I can also do a Waco rig. I can also do a wacky rig. I can also do a caffeine shad or fluke. A fluke's probably going to be the best bet, obviously, I'm thinking. But we will see, right? That's a judgment call for later. Right now I'm just going to work with this frog. We'll see what that gets us. You know, there's a little splash. It may have been a turtle, but I want to investigate it anyway. It may have been a turtle, but I want to investigate it anyway. Just give myself a little bit of... But I got to be very, very careful because this water is super, super skinny. And I do not feel like having to get out to push my boat free. But that's where we're at. This is where I'm fishing. You can see how skinny it is. You can see how shallow it is. And it's like that all around me. Now, when it comes to fall fishing, one of the biggest things we always want to remember is don't get married to one thing. Every time you go out to the water, it can be completely different. So don't get married to a particular lure, technique, presentation, or even a spot of the lake. You know, a lot of times we go to something like this. This is a typical 110 size jerkbait. This is a Yo-Zuri 3DB. And I've caught a lot of fish on this. But right now, this is going to be a little bit too much for these waters. So I'm going down to a 90 size. I'm going down to something like this KVD 200. It's only got the 2 hooks on it. It doesn't have a lot of flash. This is that thread fin shad color, smoke shad, whatever you want to call it. And that for me is working way better because those bass right now are more lethargic. They don't know what's going to come tomorrow. Everything's changing around them and they are not comfortable. So you want to go to their level. Put your lures and baits on their level. Something like shrinking down your stick bait. This is a 4-inch Googan Lunker log. A 4-inch Yum Dinger, a 4-inch Senko can be huge because whenever you're using a normal sized stick bait, the regular 5-inch size, what happens? You feel those bites. You feel those bites. You set the hook. You're reeling that fish in and you lose it halfway to the bank, halfway to the boat. And when you bring your hook in, you notice it's still exposed because that fish never had it completely. So paring down with it, going with something smaller can really, really help with that because it gives the bass something less to grab on. And speaking of a Texas rig, that's been a big player for me. Those bass in the shallow water are hugging the bottom. So I'm not fishing over their head because this is right in front of their face. They're hiding in the hydrilla. They're hiding in that flooded bush. And how I'm fishing this, that's the key. I'm being very slow. I'm being very methodical. I'm taking my time with it. And I'm very precise with it. As a matter of fact, let's go out and I'll show you just exactly how I'm fishing with these and why it can be so successful whenever you work it that way. I'm just casting it out there, letting it hit the bottom, you know, just letting it sink, not getting in any hurry, letting it go all the way down, letting it sit there for a second. And we're only in about 6 feet of water, 7 feet of water here. And then, with just a little bit of slack in the line, I'm just kind of moving that rod just a little bit. Just a little bit. You see how slowly I'm moving that? Inching it along. I'm trying to think about how that worm looks, how that crawl looks, or creature bait, or whatever you want to use, how that's looking on the bottom of the lake bed. And we've got a lot of hydrilla, so I can feel that vegetation. I can feel it right there. That's vegetation. Boom, and I just popped it free. And I just let it sit. After it pops free, I let it sit for a second. And that's what I'm doing. I'm being super, super slow with it. Super slow with it. And that's what these bass have been responding to. That's what I've been getting the bites with. They don't want to attack anything that's active. So even though we've got some good water temperature, even though that the water temperature has climbed back up into the 70s, we are still dealing with some pretty finicky bass. And that's how I'm working it. Again, casting it out there. Peel off a little extra line as you do to keep from having some fluff. Let it sink, let it sink, let it soak for just a second. Don't get in any hurry with it. And then just kind of bring it back to you. Literally that slow. You don't want to go any faster than that, because that worm is moving along the bottom way faster than you think that it is. So the slower you can get that worm to creep along, the better you'll be. And right there, just give it a pause. You know, I felt some vegetation. I pulled it through the vegetation, and then I'm going to give it a pause. See, I've got some vegetation right there. Pull it free, let it float back down, and let it pause for a few seconds. You want to give those bass every single opportunity you can to bite that worm. They're in here. I've been getting bites. We've hooked into a few fish. I've lost fish today. You know, that's part of the nature of the beast whenever you're fishing in the fall and those bass have had a shock where things have changed quicker than they are ready for it. So that's what I'm doing. Nice and slow. Nice and slow. And slow and steady wins the race. This is the retrieve that's not only getting me bites, but, you know, if I'm patient with it, let that bass eat it. Let those bass eat it before you try to reel down and set that hook. Do the best you can to make sure that bass is on there. That's going to be your best way. I mean, sometimes it can be like pulling teeth, you know. It can be frustrating how fast or how slow that you have to go. But those are the keys. Try that out. I'm telling you. Go slow, 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 and you will be surprised at how well that's going to work whenever it comes to getting, well, more bites and be able to catch more fish, because those bass are going to be taking it. They're going to be taking it and holding on to it because you've given them the opportunity to. So fishing a Texas rigged worm super slowly can be super effective. It's a pain to do it that way. Nobody likes fishing a Texas rig that way, but the fish like it that way, and that's how we need to remember it. We've got to do what the fish want us to do, not how we want to fish them. That's the best way to get bites, especially when it's finicky, especially when it's hard. We have to remind ourselves we've got to do what the bass want us to do. You know, and that reminds me about picking the right water at the right time. I've talked about water temperature, I've talked about current, but what I haven't talked about is time of day, because a lot of times the time of day matters. You know, earlier in the day there are a lot of places on the lake I completely bypass, no matter how juicy I think they're going to be, no matter how well I think I'm going to be able to fish them, simply because I don't think they're active enough yet. I don't think they've had enough time in the sun. Places that have shallow water and clear water that are not going to hold a lot of heat, I give that time, because if I go there too early, if I'm there right off of the bat, a lot of times, while there's going to be fish, there's always fish in those areas, I'm not going to catch anything. So I have to remember, the sun travels through the sky. We need to be mindful of the shade patterns that are going across that lake. The shade that goes across the lake matters, and it affects the fish, because the fish are going to move with those shades. Just like my boat spinning here in the open water. That sun is twisting around, causing shade lines all across my boat. It does the same thing as it moves across the sky and affects the lake. So we have to remember that. Pick the right time for the right place for water. That's going to be huge. You're not going to be able to get around it. These are the things that fall makes us do. Fall makes us really hone our skills. Summer can be a grind because those bass are hot and they're lethargic. But fall is a completely different animal. But once you get those things right and you learn how to take advantage of what opportunities you do have, well, then it gets easier every single time you go out. So there you have it. How I'm fishing a Texas rig when those bass get super finicky. Sometimes you just have to go slow. And why I'm choosing the water that I'm choosing depending on the time of day. Remember, sun position in the sky is very important, as much as current is, and it's something we anglers need to be more focused on. You put those things together, and I'm telling you, you will have some pretty good days out on the water. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.